welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Now we would like to invite you to join 2 other workshops. If you want to stay and listen to the perspective for all people and places, you can stay in this room. And if you would like to listen more about Thematic Action Plan on places resilient to crisis, please join the room 2. It's a similar process as you did previously. You just have to click on the corner where it says join the room and then choose the number 2 or 1. Or, well, actually, you can stay here just to choose the number 2. We will give you maybe a moment to join the other room. And again, if you're staying here, then our topic is perspective for all people and places. Quick reminder. Nothing's going to change from the structure from the previous workshop. So we will have first introduction by the ESPON Programme, ESPON EGTC, who will present more about this thematic action plan. And then afterwards we have interventions from various speakers from policy level and science level, research level. Please be active, please ask questions. You know that this is public consultation and you will have more time, as we heard before, until end of January. But also now you have a unique opportunity to get some first reactions and first responses from everybody involved in this process. Therefore, I encourage you to use the chat. And if you can, maybe just pose questions rather than start answering to each other, because we would like to hear from the experts that everybody gets the same opportunity to find out what is the opinion and the perspective. I will immediately move to our speakers because we want to use as much time as possible for the presentations. So I would like to invite Andrea Kina, who is a representative from ESPON EGTC, and she's joining us from Slovenia. So Andrea, floor is yours.
Thank you very much and good evening. Greetings from the nice city of Bled, and welcome to our introductory session on the Thematic Action Plan on perspective for all people and places. I would like for you to share us
presentation is on.
The presentation. Perfect. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. Thank you for joining the discussion. And before launching the debate, we would like to shortly present the ESPON general outline for this cross-cutting TAP, where the ambition is to develop the knowledge base on territorial partners of social and economic convergence in order to promote better balanced territorial development and reduce disparities between people and places. Next slide, please. In this wider policy framework, this TAP underpins 3 out of 5 cohesion policy objectives for 2021-2027. It fosters the objective of a more social and inclusive Europe and is in line with the objective of a Europe closer to citizens. It adheres to the objective of greener, lower carbon Europe and links to the objective of a more connected Europe. This theme correlates well with the Territorial Agenda 2030, addressing both objectives of a just and green Europe. And lastly, it coordinates with the new Leipzig Charter and the Urban Agenda 2030. Next slide, please. The objective of this TAP is to promote the diversity and the potential of European territories as a key determinant to secure sustainable territorial development. This TAP will focus on understanding the increasing territorial and social fragmentation at different territorial levels, which is sometimes fueling the growing discontent, but also will aim at informing EU and national policies about best practices or about the impact of public investments that address social upwards convergence. This TAP will pay attention to the development potential for all places in Europe and of those that favor socio-economic integrations on all levels. Next slide, please. The accumulated ESPON evidence shows that diversity remains an essential asset for the prosperous and sustainable development of both people and places. Therefore, the need to address territorial challenges and potential with a higher degree of geographical sensitivity is greater than ever. And in order to better understand drivers, effect, linkages, potential, and development opportunities, and help reduce overall inequalities or disparities between countries or regions. However, in achieving a sustainable future for all places and people, existing or social challenges need to be addressed. And here we look at social and welfare inequalities, looking at limited inclusion or poverty, for example. We look for social vulnerabilities in relation to economy or environment, or to segregation based on income, education, etc. This all for understanding the narrative behind the geography of discontent. Additionally, different crises or unforeseen events are contributing to deepening the territorial divides, affecting an already exposed or at-risk population, and consequently lowering the quality of life. Some inequalities could be more accentuated by the social-digital segregation, as the COVID pandemic has led to an accelerated digital use, bearing in mind that digitalization is a tool for enhancing well-being, not an objective in itself. Next slide, please. The layers of segregation, be it between individuals and households, generation, between or within regions, or between urban and rural areas, are often a result of inequality. However, these are influenced by different vicious circles that are generally linked to accessibility and affordability issues, like access to service of general interest, or are linked to less diversified economies, like weak or less diversified labor market, low incomes, or low vitality, like youth or migration or unemployment, thus improving or creating more attractive and people-centered places in order to secure inclusive, durable, and adaptable territories is linked to various enablers, from the individual perspective of good shelter or access to health, from the socio-economic sphere, good mobility, digital connectivity, work and consumption choices, or from the ecological perspective, looking at green environments, or how to maintain and grow protected areas. Next slide, please. Looking beyond, at European level, the diversity of challenges is met with a variety of innovative policy responses that also look at various trends. And for this specific tab, we could mention trends such demographic change with lower birth rates, in and out migration, forcing the population, or climate change, bringing socio-economic vulnerability to different types of hazards, or the ongoing technological transformation and transition to green and digital economies. More so, what the adjustment in the policy discourse has already found its way, looking at the coordinated place-based initiatives promoting well-being while acknowledging that going for growth in some areas is not the most suitable answer for balanced territorial development. Next slide, please. Thus, looking at these specific challenges, drivers, and trends led us to address some possible policy questions, such as which aspects are considered the most important in terms of priority for policy specifically addressing territorial inequalities or socio-economic convergence. How social convergence objectives are implemented at the local and regional level, and how this could be better addressed through territorial sensitive evidence. How to identify or avoid unintended negative territorial consequences of policies, or how to unlock the potential of places that are undergoing irreversible social demographic changes. In this respect, we'd like to know what would be your specific evidence and knowledge needs in terms of the territorial application of the green and digital transition to this specific TAP. But these are just a few examples, and we are not planning to resume to this. We are also looking at possible research questions and the support that ESPON could provide. What is the stock of available scientific evidence beyond the one accumulated by ESPON, matching this topical profile? What is the state of the art in the research work? Or what are the current discourse questions and debatable aspects that might be further pursued by ESPON? Are there any distinct gaps in territorial diversity that ESPON would be suited to fill in? Leaving you with this as food for thought, we very much appreciate your involvement in this in defining this new ESPON program. And if you are particularly interested in the Thematic Action Plan, we kindly invite you to join the dedicated Yammer page on the tab on perspective for all people and places. So where you can share your ideas, views, and especially join the debates. See you there. Next slide, please. I'm so sorry about this, but the last slide with the Yammer page. Thank you very much.
So final slide.
The final slide.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you very much.
I think presentations will be available also, so it's easy to find the link. Andrea will be with us and she'll be taking notes, so you can contribute as much as possible to the conversation, because this is very important for the ESPON program. I would like to move now to our speakers from the practical side, and first in line is Ms. Karima Kurtit from Open University from Helen from Netherlands to tell us scientific approach and scientific point of view. You're connected, so I think all should be fine. Just a moment. You can say something?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Yes. Perfect.
Okay. I am trying to share my screen.
Okay.
But I don't see it on...
It's at the bottom. You can choose it says share screen field.
Yeah, I see that. But the problem is, okay, now I see it. Okay. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, only if you can share it, please, in the presentation mode.
Okay.
It's in the bottom. I think there's a little slide at yes, perfect. Very good.
Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't work, because then my slides get frozen. Would it be possible to leave it as it is now?
Yeah, it's back into the normal mode. So if you go again to the presentation mode, that would be...
Is it big enough? Because if I do it in the presentation mode, sometimes my screen froze, so I cannot move it. Is it okay now?
Okay, maybe if you can just zoom it a little bit more.
Like this?
Yes, I think it's fine now.
Okay. Well, now it's my turn. Once again, thank you very much for this invitation. I'm also part of the assessment team from the Thematic Action Plan perspective for people and places. I would like also to share my main findings at the moment and observations. These are based on a few steps. The main assessment and observations findings are based on ESPON selected research projects in the field of this thematic theme, perspective for people and places. The idea, as Andrea mentioned, is to look at these projects and the documents from what has been undertaken, policy, research relevance, and perhaps also look at a knowledge gap in respect to other documents from other bodies, and also the policy cohesion, cohesion policy post-2020. So the relevant categories of the selected projects are applied research projects, target analysis, as you can see here on the screen, and monitoring and tools categorization. And each category has its own selected projects. And within, in my assessment, I have used different kinds of approaches. So this is more to give you an idea what I did to come up with the main findings and observations. This is more the overall methodology of my assessment of the study, which starts with the critical review criteria. What are the criteria, as I mentioned, and also by Andrea? The categories. What kind of categories do we have, and what kind of selected projects or projects are in each category, and is there an alignment between the categories and the main document, and also the description of the category itself? What I did also, based on my main findings for each project, I transformed it into a kind of SWOT analysis based on the main observations and findings for each category of the projects, to illustrate more the strength and the weaknesses, and what does it mean, what do these strengths and weaknesses mean for creating a kind of opportunity to identify the gaps, and to see a kind of potential regarding knowledge in different kinds of topics or thematic approach in this talk. And then, based on the SWOT analysis, I looked at the main findings in the SWOT analysis based on the selected projects. And what I did was also to see how other things are happening, the alignment between the projects and the cohesion policy report post-2020, if there is also alignment based on topics, views and approaches. So based on that, reading all the documents, I used also an approach which called the content cloud analysis, which helped me to identify the most frequent used themes and approaches in each document. And then based on the SWOT analysis and the content cloud analysis, I used the XXQ framework, I will explain that, to see if there is a gap in the topics, in the approach, and also in the different data resources that has been used in the different projects. Now, for instance, I would like to give you an illustration. This is just an illustration of one of the SWOT analysis that I did for one of the categories. So I identified the main observations and findings. I transformed them into strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats for that particular category. And then later on, I did a multi-level SWOT analysis to put all the categories together and to see if I can extract more information. This is more the content cloud. This is just one illustration. So I did more content cloud analysis. This is for the document perspective for people and places. And I did it also for other documents of other international bodies to see if there is a kind of gap into the different approaches and topics that people are focusing on, and also the high level of attention on particular topics regarding people, sustainability, knowledge, diversity, places, etc. So this is just also another example. The ESPON document, post-2020 cohesion policy document. This is more the OECD document, more resilience and cohesion Europe. Another one from the World Bank, just as an example illustration. And then I looked, then I took the SWOT analysis findings and the content cloud, and I was also looked at a kind of alignment between the XXQ, which means the high quality of life or well-being of people in particular places or location, from a broader perspective, from a multidimensional approach. So that means if we look at, for instance, health or quality of life, we have to find a kind of balance into it from the socio-economic perspective, from the technological innovation perspective, but also the environment are playing also an equal role in maximizing. So the XXQ means the highest quality of life in a kind of place. Based on all these steps, I could see that ESPON seems to be well on track. So that means that ESPON is covering different kinds of topics compared to other international bodies. So if I look at, for instance, the content cloud and the approach in different researches, I see there is a kind of similar strategic scope compared to others. If I look only at the categories related to the ESPON main document, I see also not really different directions. So the project do not display a kind of difference in thematic focus. If I look at ESPON documents and other studies of international bodies, there is a kind of consistency in themes and the way of thinking, the strategies. What I also see is that the need for a high, as I mentioned, based on the XXQ, the highest quality of life conditions, we need to have a broader interpretation of quality of life that was also mentioned in the top document. That means a multidimensional perspective, a broad way of thinking of well-being, not only on national level or regional level. it means we have to look at it from different perspectives, as I mentioned there, environment, social, mobility, technology, but also on different skills. There has to be a kind of alignment and a balanced view on a quality of life of people in particular different places. And also if I look at policy analysis tools, what we also need in these, what I was a little bit missing is a kind of systemic strategic approach regarding the policy analysis by using more not only descriptive approach based on the descriptive approach or illustrating some data to illustrate or filter some recommendations, but also to look at a kind of causality, long-term and short-term, an alignment between also the performance and also the dynamics in the drivers based on the highest quality of life of people and places, bringing them together. But what is also important is to look at the perception or preferences of people based on place-based approach. So if we, for instance, a city, looking at happiness is not only happy because of the income, but it's also important about how people are feeling, the soul of a person related to location, so the surroundings. Okay, and but I also would like to suggest to look more also into advanced analytical techniques and tools such as geodesign, scenario analysis. If we could identify the most important drivers or KPIs as was stipulated in the different projects, is also to see, to predict or to illustrate a kind of alternative to see how we can help decision making and also to bring them into a kind of policy idea, including also the voice of people, the perception of people, the value system of people, such as the digital twin. Digital twin can help us to illustrate the real life of the city on different skills, but also the perception of people related to their environment, place, and location.
Mrs. Kurti, can I ask you just if you could conclude? Sorry,
almost.
Just because
I'm almost done.
Okay.
Yes, I almost done.
Please.
Also, a more focus on strategic cohesion view based on the knowledge extracted from different projects. So also collaboration between the different projects, teams and leaders, but also sharing different kinds of data sets, bringing them into, I know it exists, but if I look into all these projects, I do not see a kind of cohesion and also a kind of approach, a multi-level approach in the collaboration, but also using the data of previous findings, etc. Last point, well, this is also what I mentioned, create a kind of high quality network of research projects and initiatives, a kind of decomposition approach. You have a strategy and then break it down into the different levels, but also different balanced perspectives. Yes, I think I'm done now, for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you as well. And I think the key word now is for now, because we will come back to you, of course, later on.
Okay, thank you.
So let's move to the next speaker. This is Mr. Janez Nared from Research Center of the Slovenian Academy of Science and Arts, and he's joining us from Slovenia. Welcome, Mr. Nared.
Good afternoon. In contrast to the presentation we heard so far, I will mostly base on the research that I have done on the regional level or on the level of the Slovenia in the last 20 years. So focusing on the perspective for all people and places, we must emphasize that no matter which indicators we take, territorial and regional and social disparities are very persistent. The territories that were defined as less developed in the 1970s in Slovenia are still the ones that are less developed, that lag behind. The same we can say for different social groups, Roma or any other marginal groups that are typically defined as marginal groups. And here we can speak about the distribution of power, geography on power on one side, and how to govern development processes. All those documents that are actually including part of this thematic action plan, like New Urban Agenda and so on, speak about multi-level governance. However, the experiences show many different positive or negative aspects of multi-level governance. And in example, there are only few local authorities that were able to make a big bust in terms of development. However, this lack of power in some cases is evident and is persistent as well. The second thing that I would like to emphasize here is the big number of different strategic documents we can see at the European level and also national level. But what we actually lack is coordination among those documents and focus on the implementation. One of important aspects that we have studied in Slovenia is also the distribution of public and private services. If we firstly concentrate on public services, we can say that the network of services is quite well distributed throughout the countries. And we can say that in many cases, some less developed or sparsely populated areas are even better equipped with services if we just compare the availability of services per capita. But if you would check it from the accessibility perspective, from the location, how quick can we assess this location? Of course, the situation is just the opposite. And there is not just the question of special proximity, but also the capacity of the services that are available in a certain location. On general, we can observe that due to the localization of the policies and the numerous local governance reforms that we have had in Slovenia in the last 20 years or 30 years, the institutions at the local level exist. The problem is the erosion of institutions from the central government that move to the regional or national level. Bigger problem in the relation of the service provision is with marketable services, where the central government does not have any direct influence. But also in the fields where there is direct influence in the, let's say, postal services. So one of the main or crucial aspects for less developed areas should be how to ensure the provision of marketable services. Currently, we speak about many global challenges like demographic change or climate change and similar. And those are just an addition to the already existing challenges that those regions have. And we should be aware that weaker regions, weaker areas have lack of knowledge, lack of financial and human capital. So they should be supported if we really strive to have a perspective for all the places and all the people. One of the challenges is also demographic change that will have many different consequences in the territory. Based on the study we have done at the level of Slovenian municipalities, we have observed that there are all municipalities will be, all areas will be affected by the development, by the demographic change. However, there will be two that will face this change even more severely. One are the already now sparsely populated rural areas. And the second that will be even more problematic in terms of social aspects, social issues, are the shrinking cities. Namely, what we have observed are that shrinking population in cities is quite often linked with many different social problems. And this is a challenge that will have to be faced also at the European level. And if we would like to check the long-term perspective, what we have observed when we studied the problem border areas was that 70% of the population was totally happy with the quality of life in this area, although they were defined as very problematic ones. However, there were approximately 38% of young people who declared that they would like to move from these locations. So we should, in order to ensure long-term development of those areas, focus on young generation who actually expose two main challenges. These are the working opportunities and housing. The rest is fine, but these two challenges are those that have to be overcome. But on the other side, due to demographic changes, we should also have in mind the elderly who will need a lot of attention in the coming decades. One of the aspects I would also like to mention in parallel to the governance and multi-level governments is the decision-making system, which I think we have a crisis of decision-making. We already heard today about illiberal policies, about populism, demagogy, also lack of data in decision-making. And I think it is a really important role of the ESPON to contribute with really data-based support to the policymaking. If I would try to summarize some main conclusions that are necessary to be taken into account for the future program, is where to use the challenges for the development of these kind of areas. And one can be a kind of guided digitalization. We have already heard today about the COVID effect on the redistribution of jobs. Namely, before it was impossible to work at home mostly, now it's a real life. But this is only possible if we have a good connection to good internet connection, broadband connections. And we should also think about the challenges in front of us. We speak about Industry 4.0, we think about autonomous driving, but yet we have areas that are not covered with a mobile signal. How can we build on these areas? How can we improve this to enable or not to block the development of the entire territory? The second point is the job creation and economic aspects or marketable services in those vulnerable areas. Focus on accessibility in terms of services and also in terms of mobility. Focus on young generation and also focus on challenges that can be on the possibilities that are offered also by demographic changes. Namely, this is also an opportunity for new businesses, particularly in those areas where there are a lot of older population. Thank you very much.
Thank you as well, Ms. Nared. Quite interesting input, I have to say. But let's move to the next speaker, and then we can come back later on with more questions and debates. Now we will go to the south of Europe, which I'm really happy, at least in thoughts, to be there with this weather today in Luxembourg. And I would like to invite Mr. Rui Inácio from Portuguese Cohesion and Development Agency joining us from Portugal to talk about policy maker approach. Welcome.
Thank you, Ivana, and thank you for the invitation for the agency to participate in this panel and in this discussion for the next ESPON program. I would like to share with you some thoughts on the some thoughts on how ESPON could give us the input, could provide us with evidence that will be important for the policy making for regional policy during the next decade. And I would like also to thank my colleagues Karima, Yanis. I'm sorry for the way I said the names. The names, it could be wrong, but they paved the way for a very streamlined communication from my own, because I would like to highlight four main areas where I think that the ESPON and this TAP on perspective for all people and places could provide us a valuable contribution for development of policies. First of all, due to a different range of evolutions in socio-economic dynamics in the last years, namely due to the COVID, but also taking into account mega trends, as for instance the demographic change, which is a very important issue here in Portugal, and the urbanization and so on. The provision of social services of general interest is a key area for the development of policies for territorial well-being. It is important in order to provide the people in different areas to have access to those services, but it could be also very important as an asset to attract and retain people in those areas that are facing depopulation. This is to say, as Yanis said before me, that, for instance, if I do not have the right balance to provide, for instance, education for young people, for youngsters in some territories which are facing the population, or if I have difficulties to attract teachers to come and teach in a metropolitan area due to the price of housing in that metropolitan area, I will be in a worse condition to retain or even to attract or even to retain people on those areas. So the provision of social services of general interest is being studied by us in the last years. I think that COVID provides us a new framework of analysis, taking into account the centrality of health care as well as social services care in those territories, and of course it should be also analyzed, taking into account the digital revolution and the way the new digital tools could provide us, could help to provide the services to population. On the other area I would like to touch upon is the opportunities coming from remote work. And remote work is in itself also an area of segregation, because there are lots of people that are not able to provide remote work. I could think, for instance, in people that works in supermarkets, or people that used to be collecting waste from our municipalities and so on, which could not in particular be do remote work. But remote work is for territories, or some territories, could be an important opportunity to attract people, since those territories are able to provide a good internet connection. Once again, I come back to Yanis to say that it is totally important to have digital connectivity in all over the places, and this will lead to evaluate the presence of the state or solutions for those areas where the companies won't invest because it would not provide profits. But besides good internet connection, of course, there are other features that need to be provided in those territories that could, for instance, lead some people coming from in my country, going from Lisbon to a place in Alentejo or in inner north to work. It is to say that, of course, social services of general interest. I have to have school for my kids. I have to have access to a good hospital or a good medical assistance. I would like to have also another part of a person's life, of people's life, for instance, good access to culture, good access to amenities which are important to develop day-to-day life. At the same time, this question of remote work is very important for some places because they can attract people taking into account or regarding in order to answer, for instance, the population. But it should be also looked from the other side. In large cities, in metropolitan areas, there are impacts on the way the cities are evolving, on way even the economic activities in those cities are developed that could change, taking into account that if there is a strong orientation for remote work and so on. The other two things I would like to highlight is territorial impact of digital revolution. Digital revolution will provide different modes of production, will ask for different kind of competencies, different mix of competencies, and once again, we need to, in a more person-based approach, we need to tackle the difficulties that people coming from already disadvantaged scenarios could have. Provide a mix of training, a mix of labor market experience to youngsters that come from those areas, taking into account the foreseeable pattern of specialization of those territories or the new areas of economic activity of those areas are important. And just to conclude, I know I'm reaching the limit of my time. Just to say that as a sort of a structural condition for all this to work. The huge investment on mobility, because mobility is one of the greatest investments we need to do all over Europe to cope with the climate change. And we need to provide the right conditions for people and to places, for people to move between places, and for places to be attractive, so we can cope both with the climate challenges as well as with the ability to promote more inclusion and more quality of life to those areas and the people living there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and also thank you for the last point, because as in previous workshop, you're already making links to another thematic action plan, which is very good. We already have some questions for you and Mr. Narid, but I will wait until the end of all speakers, and then we can come back to these interventions. I would like to invite now Mr. Joost Kuiper, who is a special economical strategist for the province of Overijssel from Netherlands. I don't know if I pronounced any of this correctly, but you will forgive me. And you are here to tell us more about policymaker perspective as well.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to say a few words. I will try to make my face a little bit less white here, but I'm sorry if that wasn't working out. I'm a policy maker from a NUTS 2 region in the Netherlands, so somewhere at the east of the country located. And that is necessary to know from what kind of perspective I look at the Thematic Action Plan, for which I was invited to give some comments. I would try to share my screen, but I could also do it just to give my talk to you and share the sheets afterwards. I might be a little bit critical. I have 2 sheets on 3 of the topics asked. So one is on the knowledge generation or production. One is on the policy and how to use as a potential user the ESPON results, and on the support by the ESPON program organization. Now, my first comments are about the knowledge. I think that the thematic action plan of perspective for all people and places is more or less the pizza base, the bottom of the pizza. And there are the other 3 thematic action plans are the topping. So it's either green in combination with the societal bottom, or functional areas which combine several topics, or it is about resilience. And most of the time, you get something like a quattro stagioni, that you even mix these toppings. But my point is that in the text, it looks as if there is less attention to this base, these base analysis, and there could be then more attention given to the toppings, so to green, functional, and resilient. And I think that would be a big mistake. My second remark regarding the knowledge is that I would advocate put citizens central. What I see in the text and the circumscriptions is that the base is not stable at this moment in the European community. There's lots of fragmentation, there is social unrest, there is pressure at the EU borders. So one of the central research questions then could be what is the diversity of challenges leveraging upward potential to territories, or is it providing downward risks? Because I see regions climbing and I see regions falling downwards, or not even regions, but municipalities or local areas. So that is a central research question in which I think that the circumscription of the thematic action plan, the 2-pager I read, could be more precise. A third observation is that ESPON is very helpful in visualizing hotspots. I looked back into the archive of the 2016 conference in Amsterdam, and somebody told there, if it's not on the map, it's not a major issue. It's not a matter of interest or nationally. So I think that it would be a good thing if through the ESPON research work, new data and light could be shed on these diversity issues and these segregation issues. And I would recommend to also have a look at new data sources, for example, from remote sensing or Earth observation. Then a fourth comment is about putting quality of life central in the research program. I would love to see ESPON adopting and putting central the UN Sustainable Development Goals as a standardized and harmonized concept throughout the European member states. That is still not the case, and it would make it a much more easier to compare if everybody would at least use the same language for addressing quality of life. Last remark regarding the knowledge production. What I miss is anything which could be called follow the public money. I still see that there is at least in the Netherlands, there is a big geographical distribution and a distribution of impact of public investments between core region and peripheral regions. I think that is in most of the member states the case. So I would advocate favor kind of research which puts the investments, the public investments, and the impact and spillovers of public investments central. So far, the knowledge production. If I look then to the policy and how policymakers could be helped from ESPON research, I make a distinction in 3 levels. On the macro level, say the complete European Union, I think that ESPON is doing great work on divergence and inequality studies to prevent or to support convergence and cohesion at the EU level, which is very much needed to have a one central European Union kind of society. So divergence and inequality issues. At the meso level, I think that is a different kind of picture where you could support policymakers. At that level, I would put central infrastructures for energy and climate transition, also climate, on circular economy. What do we do with our redesign, but mainly what do we do with our raw materials, which are getting scarce? And I would also pinpoint at the meso level to the EU connectivity. And that is the bridge to the functional areas, especially all the work on trans-European networks, which I still think is very needed to work on more cohesion in the European Union. And then finally, at the micro level of localities or municipalities, there is the central place for the inhabitants. So the kind of habitus for quality of life, and between brackets, housing, living, safety, alienation, loneliness, and the prospect of future of coping behavior with respect to the future of all kinds of groups, social groups, so aging people or youngsters. So far about the policy level, and that's ESPON could really make a case for enlarging the civic commitment at all levels. Citizens first. That would be my slogan for the next for this step. And some last remarks, then final remarks about the support given. I would put the upcoming research work on data science as a new source for professional development at regional level, that I would support that ESPON would do a bit more about that, and also to organize trainings for it and to compare approaches between the different member states. I would put the 4 activities, so the territorial analysis, policy analysis, the workshops and the prototyping, I would keep those 4 activities together in a project. So those 4 work packages are done by the same group of participants. Workshops on best practices is always good. especially in quality of life policy schemes and on the approaches to the sustainable development goals. I would also advocate more links between the European Union topics and the ESPON research groups. Can you make a special interest group for upcoming topics, for example? And can you synchronize the policy needs with the committee of the regions? I missed this regional level in the text. Then what I said about citizens first, work together with EXA and adopt and enrich the citizen science frame. And finally, find some collaboration with the economic geography e-magazines, open access to enlarge the exposure for the interesting ESPON research. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Also very interesting.
Yeah, you pronounced it very well.
Oh, thank you. It's good to know.
Yeah. It's Joost like toast, and it's so quite easy. Yeah.
I will practice more, but thank you for this feedback. Yes, thank you. And also we are receiving more questions, and thank you for the audience for being so active. But just before we go to your questions, we still have another speaker, and this is Ms. Natalia Havidic, from Strategic Planning, Digitalization and EU Funds Department from the Ministry of Tourism and Sport from Croatia. Ms. Havidic, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all participants, and thank you as an organizer to giving me the opportunity to speak and give our inputs from the perspective of national ministry responsible for policies and strategic planning for tourism and sport. I will focus in my presentation on tourism activities, as we see that tourism is an excellent instrument for socio-economic development in local communities. And we see tourism sector as a very good perspective for all people and places, especially in countries such as Croatia, because of the fact that our global economy is very, very much dependent on tourism activities. And also we see a good perspective for job opportunities from tourism activities, but also we see some, let's say, negative impacts of tourism on well-being of people and places in our environment. So regarding position within the ministry, right now we are working on the development of our new strategy of sustainable tourism until 2030. We are talking about three aspects that are very important: innovative, sustainable, and resilient tourism. When we talk about the innovative tourism, we see the need to shift from the massive tourism that have a negative aspect on people and places in destinations in Croatia especially. And we see the need to shift on quality tourism. When we talk about sustainability, we are thinking also about economic sustainability, we are thinking about social sustainability, and we are talking also about the resources, our natural resources in Croatia. When we talk about resilient tourism, we are thinking how to manage to solve the resilient, in order to have the possibility to have tourism that is resilient to crisis, especially regarding the situation that come up after COVID-19 in our sector. It is our national strategy, and we proceeded with all the processes, and it is our new framework for just before the financial perspective for EU funds, as we count in Croatia much to focus on to solve our problems with the EU funds also. Key factors when developing strategy of sustainable tourism until 2030, we were considering different aspects and factors: satisfaction of local population, the need for developing the skills, defining the potential for tourism development without the overuse of resources. We also need to tackle challenges of over-tourism, as our coast, you all are probably aware that Croatia has many touristic destinations that are overcrowded, such as Rovinj in Istria and Dubrovnik on the south of Croatia. So we see the need that throughout the strategy we develop sustainable goals and help all the destination to solve the problems in order to not to for local communities not to be dissatisfied with the touristic activities, and moreover to give the opportunity to local communities to have positive impacts and job opportunities from it. Therefore, focusing in the development of tourism is on entire territory of Croatia, as tourism is unevenly distributed, which adds to territorial imbalance. To achieve this, we want to focus on different areas. We want to strengthen linkages and opportunities in tourism value chain, which activates regional ecosystems as well as in national and EU value chains. This is an important measure for us, as we all know that tourism is not only one sector that is involved. We have different other sectors that are involved in throughout the tourism value chain. We have agriculture, we have mobility, we have digitalization, creative industries, and we see all these let's say strengthening linkages in all this throughout the tourism value chain as a good opportunity for job opportunities in our places and destinations in Croatia. Also, what we want to achieve through our measures defined in the strategy is to enable environment for effective tourism businesses. We want to change legal framework and level of support adjusted to regional and local needs. Also, we want to focus on green and digital transition of tourism, as we saw that this can achieve the resilience of our sector. Also, there are measures that are connected to circular economy in tourism. Additionally, we want to develop innovative business models as well as creation of innovative hubs, as we saw that innovation in tourism can shift the tourism from massive tourism to quality tourism, and we see this as a good opportunity also for the satisfaction of local communities and for different quality jobs there. Additionally, we heard throughout the presentations today that we need to focus on vulnerable groups also. We, from the perspective of our strategy, see the good opportunity to develop skills and create job opportunities, not for all, especially for vulnerable groups. We are talking about young people, because in Croatia, many young people do not have quality job opportunities and tourism, and throughout the value chain of tourism we see that there is a possibility for that. Also, we focused on accessible tourism infrastructure, as we see that all people needs to be satisfied with the touristic offer and have the accessibility to all important to tourism offer. The other important thing also is the participation of local communities in the development of tourism, in order to ensure their economic and social well-being, as well as to foster local identities and cultural and natural heritage. When we are talking about how are there any knowledge gaps that could prevent in delivering more effective policy responses in our sector, we are aware that there are knowledge gaps that could have negative impact on effective policy responses, and we see that these gaps are in part of tourism data. We see the need to better analyze how tourism data can be used in order to better decision making for policy choices, and data on how to measure sustainability of tourism destinations. Also, we identified the gap in knowledge and good practices and innovation on tourism in order to raise the quality of tourist experience and to increase spillover effects of tourism into other sectors. One of the key factors for fostering innovation in tourism is being included in smart specialization strategies on national and regional level. Also, we see a gap in knowledge and lack of practices in impact evaluation of strategic documents for tourism. We need efficient impact evaluation of strategies in order to measure the impact of tourism on socio-economic development and in order to improve policy making. Also, we see a gap in knowledge and good experiences in measuring sustainable goals in tourism. Along with the lack of knowledge, I also believe that we need best practices to help us solving these knowledge gaps. When we are thinking about how ESPON program can help us and is it a relevant instrument for addressing these knowledge gaps that we identified, we see definitely that ESPON program can help us in doing this in all identified areas. It is by conducting comparative studies for better understanding of impact of tourism on socioeconomic development on national and regional levels, and even on macro-regional level. We see an excellent opportunity to use ESPON program to inform EU and member states and to promote policies that support socioeconomic development of tourist destination. Also, we consider as very important the aspect of capacity building of policymakers through ESPON program with the aim to promote diversification of territories and create better living environment for people in tourist destination in Croatia and all our member states. Thank you very much.
Thank you as well. I think we heard quite a lot of very interesting interventions from our speakers from both fields, scientific and the research field, as well as policymakers. Some of you already started commenting on the previous speakers, so in a way debating with each other, and we are very pleased about this. However, in order to also hear what our participants wanted to know and wanted to contribute to this discussion, because we are receiving many comments, I would maybe now immediately open the floor for questions and answers from the audience. And for this, we have a very interesting question that was directed to our two scientists, so basically to Ms. Kurtit and Mr. Nared, that less developed areas persist to be less developed, which participant mentioned is not just in Slovenia, but usually funds that are spent to support this catch-up of areas, of such areas, are significant, but little change or just in a short time change is achieved. Is there something maybe wrong with our approach to the assessment, what is more or less developed, and is there something that we can change about this? What is your opinion? Maybe let's start with Ms. Kurtit first.
Thank you very much for this question. Very interesting question, less developed. I would like to start with the idea, what is less developed on what? It's really important to understand the criteria of the level of undeveloped performance. So what I would like to suggest is also as an input for future and possibilities for this step is to look at a better understanding of the different themas and the performance to illustrate the level of the development. Is it less developed or is it a high developed performing area or region? And what I mean is more understanding about, let's say, climate change, the activities or the strategies related to climate change. What does it mean, not only for the region itself, but also on a lower level? How do people understand the idea of climate change? And what does it mean for the people themselves? I'm mentioning people, but we are dealing with different kinds of groups. So that means we have to look at, first of all, the policies of redevelopment or repositioning the area, but also on the understanding of that particular theme. I would say here health or climate change or energy transition. So what is then the understanding in which context? First of all, in which context, what is then the conceptualization of this idea? And how can we get people involved, first to understand the implementation for less developed areas and how these implementation of policies reflect or received by the people or the different groups in particular areas. That's one thing. And also what we need is a kind of, how can I say, citizens science. That means how can we get people involved in less developed areas to understand what kind of actions do we need for redevelopment to improve ourselves? What are the misunderstandings? What are the things that we need to improve ourselves? So we need also the people to improve our performance on mobility, social inclusion, entrepreneurship, etc. Next to that, we need also data. If we develop some policies in collaboration or as a co-creation with the different groups in different territorial areas, we need also data to monitor the implemented policy or actionable policies to see how the development also is developing further on particular actions, such as I mentioned, the energy transition in collaboration with people. And what kind of data do we need? Based on all the research, I see data on one particular level. But if we have a kind of data management system, when we bring different kinds of data sources, that we can illustrate the development. Is it less developed next to target settings, or is it well developed, and how is the process going on? And we need not only data based on the history, but also real-time data. I heard also in the presentations, we need data like, how do we call it, social media data, for instance, sensor data. And how can we combine the data that we already have with the data that has been created or extracted from the invisible platforms, but also try to collaborate with people and create that kind of co-creation, that they can also act as producers of data for the development of particular ideas for low developing areas. So it's a combination of understanding what we really mean by we are less developed on what is needed, how can we make that understandable in collaboration with the different people in the city or different neighborhoods, because we are dealing with people with different backgrounds, with different needs. And how can we monitor it, not only from the government side or policy side, but also that people can follow their own behavior or own performance within different areas.
Thank you very much. Very interesting points. Mr. Nared, would you like to comment on this? Because we were asked to ask the scientists if you wish to add anything to this debate.
Yes, of course. I will just try to shortly present the point of the example of Slovenian regional policy. In around 2007, we had so-called reports on the implementation of regional policy. And if there was two parallel studies on the direct regional policy, that was the funds that were actually for the measures applied in the problem areas, and then indirect regional policy that related to all the horizontal policy, the policies that had regional effects. And the first one, the direct regional policy, was estimated around 0.5%. And it went directly to those problem areas. On the other side, the indirect regional policy that was estimated at 5% of the GDP went on majority in the most developed centers, like for the maintenance of the cultural institutions and so on. So to illustrate this, in less developed areas, we would build water supply system, and in developed areas, we would at the same time build broadband connections. So this divide between developed and less developed will even rise in the future. And if we just take an example of the COVID crisis, when we had limited access to the cultural institutions, and there were many comments in the cities that those limitations are really terrible and that we do not have this access. But no one questioned himself, what is the access to these institutions from somebody that lives 200 kilometers away and have no access to this institution, not just in COVID time, but never. So these are the examples we talk about. So that's why those differences, or underdeveloped areas are so persistent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we may have time for one or two more questions, but I'm just looking at two very interesting points that were brought up regarding digitalization. One comment is that we need to deepen the understanding of the digitalization and the point of view of digital skills, because those with limited access to digitalization are actually the most vulnerable categories of the population. But before I ask who would like to comment on this, I would like to link it up to with another digitalization question. That it was mentioned that for the young generations, that housing and working places are crucial. But this may not be enough for them to stay in rural or remote areas, where, for example, we have agriculture or forestry or natural conservation as prevailing sectors. And the question is, it would be interesting to investigate in what way these fields, maybe in combination with digitalization, can support actually young generations staying or even moving to remote areas. I think maybe, I guess, if I remember correctly, that Mr. Ignacio mentioned something in this relation, but also the research from Mr. Nared was in this direction. If I can call you for comment, please.
Okay, thank you. I would like just to make a brief comment on that, on those both questions. First of all, the question of the regarding skills is very important. I think that all of us could assist during the COVID-19 surge that we are started talking some years ago of digital revolution, the digitization of production and so on, and from one moment to another, we are facing digitization on our real life, if I may say so. And of course, that it helped us to understand that we lack, or a great part of the population lack the digital and the basic digital skills, for instance, to have a call as we have. Of course, everyone has learned from one year and a half ago, but we need to invest a lot on digital skills. And this is not only a matter for people like us that need to use the digital tools every day. It is also for those which would need, for instance, to or could, for instance, need to use medical care, and could, instead of going to an hospital, it could be served by a digital talk with a doctor, or to those where those that can, for instance, provide or have a contact with the public administration for a certain services which does not need personal contact and needs to have the basic skills to do that. And of course, that there are a lot of jobs that needs to be to have a focused learning process on digital skills. So those people could be updated to perform the job, as well as to go to another job when, for instance, their job could be replaced by a robot or something like that. And regarding the territorial areas where the economic activities, the pattern of specialization is not directly linked to digital skills or to a more interesting areas for youngsters, as you mentioned, and as it is mentioned in the chat, I think that there is an important role, and we need to study that, an important role of the urban centers that uses to structure those interlands. This is to say that the question is not moving from Inner Alentejo in Portugal to going to Lisbon, which is a metropolitan area. It is possible to stay in the same region, for instance, to be a resident in the same village and work in the nearby urban center, and providing some service, for instance, for a company which is in Lisbon. This is to say that I think that we should think in a sort of a meso scenario. It is a medium-term option, which is not going out because there are no options. No, we need to provide critical mass to those urban centers so they can provide the right opportunities to people to stay. But of course, all the opportunities won't be at our disposal at every place. So we need to find a balance between the the skills we provide to people, of course, they should have all the entire access to those skills and competences and so on. And the place where they can live nearby the place they are born, for instance, but knowing that it is impossible to have every opportunity in every place.
Thank you very much. We are running out of time, so if you forgive me, Mr. Nard, I know I asked for your intervention, but maybe we can continue this in Yammer later, because I need to give a floor to Andrea to summarize these discussions from the ESPON point of view. Andrea, if you could just give us a brief feedback, what did you pick up from this workshop today?
First of all, I would like to thank you all for this inspiring start. As it was highlighted, this is a cross-cutting TAP, and the links to other different TAPs are bound to appear. Of course, we will need to further explore these ramifications. We do not claim full coverage with this initial paper, and we very much like to continue this exchange to further strengthen the ESPON work. Either we build on your ideas that go for theoretical aspects or for more practicals from the way we collect data or knowledge production. The idea that transpired is that we need to identify the right tools to overcome the big challenges that come in different ways, be it from mega trends or long-standing trends or from unforeseen events. Means also looking at the consequences and the opportunities that this may bring. Reiterating what was said in the beginning of this day, providing data and knowledge to support decision-making is one of the ESPON pillars, and we'd very much like to address the specific territorial needs at the different levels. But what is more important is that this TAP is about people, and will turn to people to find out what has to be done. I would like to extend my invitation once more to join us on the Yammer page and be part of our community. I will share the link in the chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea. And you also gave me a keyword here, people. I would like to thank all the speakers, even though at the end we didn't manage to get everybody's feedback. But as I said, Yammer is open, and you can always contribute with your comments and questions and suggestions. But I would also like to thank people who were behind the screens that we don't even see, our participants who were so active and truly made this event interactive, even though it was a bit of a fear at the beginning, but we are very happy that there was so many interaction. All the questions that were not answered and posted in chat will be commented or answered in Yammer. So please follow the consultation process at the links that are provided by ESPON Programme. Public consultation will end of January, if I remember, 31st of January. This all depends on you. So the more you contribute, the more ESPON will reflect on what is possible and what they can achieve. But once again, thank you for everybody for joining us from all over Europe and making this event truly European that we all wanted from the beginning. All the slides will be posted on the ESPON website, so don't worry, you can catch up also what was said if you missed it by any chance. Thank you from my side, and we hope to see you again soon, maybe in Bled again. Have a nice evening.